Welcome to the Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we talk about what's weighing on our minds. I'm Michael, and today I am your daddy.
I am Don. I am a chubby guy living here in Hollywood, and today I am your twink boy. Why not? I'm a twink. On the radio, I can be anything.
Yeah, it's true.
My name is Dan Oliverio. I'm a chubby chaser, author, and stuff like that. God, I don't know. I get sir a lot.
You're a furry. You're a furry.
I get
He's a master?
Yeah, no, he's a furry.
Master?
No, I'm not a furry. Please. Nothing against furries, but that's so not me.
I'm Trevor. I'm a super chub, and I'm a talking skull that you find in your grandmother's attic after she dies.
Oh, that one. Yeah, I remember it.
I've been outdone. Why did?
I'm trying to figure out what that's going to look like on Xtube. Like, that's interesting.
See, I thought you were going for the whole skull. No, never mind. We're moving on.
There's so many places to penetrate.
Oh God. Take two.
Wow.
So we have a bit of a. I'm sorry, I'm still lost in the skull thing. Like, I'm trying to reorient my brain because it was so far out of left field.
Pull out.
All right, Trevor, you get the $5. You were the first one to break Michael today.
Dang it. So we have something kind of interesting in the world of movies. There's a new movie coming out. And Dan, did you want to tell us a little bit more of that?
Yeah, it's called Sumo. And it's a coming-of-age comedy set in the world of amateur sumo wrestling. And what makes it a little more notable, because it's not like there's never been a sumo wrestling movie. There's one that came out, I think, in Thailand, and but this is by the executive who produced Veep, Armando Iannucci, and it's directed by Natalie Bailey, and those two have worked together.
Oh, cool!
And so it could be kind of interesting. It's about this fat kid who gets bullied at school. And he finds a Japanese American teacher who begins to train him in sumo.
Oh,
but it's like Karate Kid, but sumo.
It's a woman, which
Yes.
I love because there was the documentary Little Miss Sumo, but I've I mentioned in my New York Times article, I did sumo in LA for a little while. And I was so surprised that no one's done anything about female sumo wrestling. So I like that they're incorporating that into the story because it is a big part, especially in US sumo, because in Japan, their female wrestlers aren't allowed to participate in mainstream sumo wrestling.
Oh.
And I don't really know exactly what it's like in the other countries, because I know the US Sumo Open does have women's wrestling. There aren't many wrestlers, but it is one of the few places that they're allowed to participate.
The only thing that scares me is comedy plus fat can often go very poorly.
The article did state, it made a point to address the fact that they are looking for a message of body positivity, and they're treating it, they specifically use the word delicately. So I think they are going in at least with the intention of handling it appropriately.
Yeah.
Whether or not they do that is sort of up to whenever the movie comes out. But I think they are going in with the right attitude.
Yeah, and if the sumo trainer is a woman, if the director is a woman, I think we got a shot at this.
They'll have a little bit of sensitivity about it.
Once I saw it was a female director, I was like, okay, there's hope for that. This will not turn into fat joke.
Yeah. Well, because they do cite a few different coming of age comedies as influences, or it'll be and one of them was super bad, and that kind of gave me a pause for a second, but I think it'll come out better than that.
And the female aspect, going back to that, the female aspect of it's very interesting to me too.
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about body positivity issues, I think, men have one set of issues, women have a lot of overlap, but they're seen as being very separate.
Yeah.
So,
very
and
good.
I took a sumo at UCLA, where they had the U.S. middleweight women's champion that I got to practice with, and the U.S. Silver lightweight champion. And both of those women were maybe a quarter of my size, maybe a third, and could just throw me around the ring. It was amazing.
Wow.
There is a skill to it,
So the interesting thing for me about sumo is that I was thinking about what would I have done if I were a 10-year-old kid and this movie had come out and it was actually taken seriously and something that could have been that I could have looked at and actually appreciated as a kid, because that's going to be their primary audience, I would assume, is teenagers and families. So I think it's just really interesting, the idea that there's movies like this that are coming out, and kind of like Dumplin' as well. But this, I think, has like a higher pedigree, just as far as like being featured in, what was it, Variety? Or
or Hollywood Reporter.
Yeah. And so like there's clear, and of course the creators of Veep are huge.
Yeah, Iannucci's enormous.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be, I'm really excited. I think I misspoke earlier. It's not imminent yet. It's still, I think it's yet to be shot still.
No, yes, it is. But it's been announced, and they've actually said they're shooting in South Africa.
But my question was, I mean, to the three of you, what would it have meant to you as a kid to have seen a movie like this, where it was like handled seriously?
I think that depends on the movie.
Imagine this is the movie that you want it to be as an adult. Like, what is the perfect version of this movie? And then what would the kid version of you?
Trevor was really into sumo as a kid anyway.
I mean, I think it would have been like this weird thing that my mom would have been like, nope, we're going to try to shift away from this. Cause my mom is very great about like me being fat now, and now me doing sumo. When Dan and I first went to the tournament, I'm like, oh, they have classes. I'm thinking of doing it. And my mom said to my sister, like, I can't remember the thing she compared it to, but it was one of the most difficult phone calls she had with me.
Oh, I remember this.
I don't remember what she compared it to.
But I think what you're referring to is there was a sense of embarrassment on your mother's part that you were interested or involved in sumo?
Yes. And I think this movie will change that. And I think it might actually ignite because it does exist around the country, but not as widespread. And I think this will probably change that.
I don't know. I would love that, but I'm just kind of afraid that it's because you seem to be kind of envisioning the Karate Kid, like, poor Daniel-san can't get a break at school, so he learns karate and now he's a champion. I'm not sure that the kid is going to take that journey. I'm really much more afraid that this is going to be, oh yeah, sumo, the sport for loser fat kids.
I don't think so. How I'm picturing it is he learns about himself, and then also I think it will kind of shift focus to the teacher, and I think she will kind of have like a redemption arc, and I think she'll participate in the tournament, and I think he might I can see him just getting his ass beat, but still like proud that he did it, and that maybe.
And if you're familiar with Iannucci's work, like Veep and Avenue 5 on HBO right now.
Yeah, exactly.
His stuff is smart. It's wrapped in sort of a shiny candy-like veneer of being silly and frothy, but often he's making a much deeper statement that is going to the core of some major issues going on.
Yeah, I'm just like a lot of people. I've just been burned so many times, and I would love to be wrong. Please, may I be wrong?
As a side note, I had a very different experience with sumo when I was 17 or 18 years old. They were trying to make a sumo movie back then, and there were no large Asian type actors in Hollywood, so they did a mass cattle call across the country in major cities.
And they found you?
Well, I went and I auditioned because my dad heard about it. And my dad was like, you got to go try this. Like, this could be your big break. And it's very interesting that my dad was never psyched that I was a fat person, but he was never overtly awful about it the way my mom was. But the idea of me acting in a movie about a sport that I was built for was very exciting for him.
And, you asked Michael, what would it have been like? I think it might have been when I was a kid, I would have completely dismissed it because sumo is a sport, and I was known in high school as the great indoorsman. So, although I guess you play sumo indoors, I don't know, but I think I would have had that prejudice. But when I got with Trevor, and Trevor was very into sumo, and then Trevor decided to pursue sumo, I went to the match. Oh my God. And you're going to say, oh, well, yeah, of course you like fat guys wrestling. No, it's not that. It is just, see, one of the things I like about sumo is it's incredibly simple. There are subtleties, but there are basically two big rules. Don't go outside the circle. Don't fall down. I can keep track of that. And a match between two competitors is literally less than 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah. If 30 seconds would be epic.
It would be long.
A minute-long match is like people are standing and screaming like, oh my, what is happening?
Exactly. And it's not that I have a short attention span, but like if you want to see just the drama, if you want to get the reel of just the highlights, that's the match.
And I'm curious, I can't remember, did the article say when it was supposed to be released?
Well, it's not shooting till later this year, so probably another year
like
or
a
two.
year from now.
A year and a half, depending on how much post they need.
Well, cool. Well, if the podcast is still around, then we'll be sure to review it. We'll come back. Okay, so on to
It's Lizzo Watch. Dun, 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 dun.
Lizzo Watch 2020.
Yeah.
I just can't believe you were able to improvise an entire tap number with that. That was really impressive.
But so this week at the Brit Awards in London, Lizzo stole the show in a Hershey dress.
No.
So it would like the dress looks like a Hershey wrapper.
Oh my, like a big kiss, like she's a big Hershey's kiss.
And then she
I love
had
it.
a matching Hershey like bejeweled clutch. She was posing like pretending to take a bite out of it.
Lovely.
And it's just amazing.
That's
it's
just so. She's so fun. Like,
Yeah.
she's just. It's like you said last time. She's just like a beacon of joy. Like that made me laugh and smile, and I love it.
yeah, and it's great. So just that was Lizzo.
Well, and did we want to throw in here that she just won the I think is it the NAACP Image Awards
Oh,
for Best Performer of 2019?
I didn't.
I mean, it would be
Please.
2019.
2019.
2019.
Oh, no, I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. That thing you said.
The thing you said.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Lizzo.
Yay.
And
Wait. Is she a chocoholic? Because this could be a problem. This
Do
could
we have to worry about Lizzo's chocolate problem? And I want a Hershey's dress.
We can make that happen, but you have to put it on during the show.
I mean, I could be wearing it right now, and the listeners wouldn't know.
You look stunning in that Hershey's dress.
If you can
Remember?
take pictures of me and post it on social, I can totally take pictures of you.
No,
so
you don't have access to the social.
Well, I have a phone and my own. I'll start my own account. I'll start my own podcast.
The Big Fat Gay Podcast official.
Yeah. And I'll get verified and everything. So we do actually have something real to get to. And this is something that I don't know nearly as much about. This is going to be probably a lot of me asking questions, and Don, I think, as well.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat.
So Dan, why don't you introduce us to...
So a question that I keep having when I go and I give seminars or I go to conferences, it is 99% female.
Mm-hmm.
And it begs the question, where are all the men? Like you'd think there's no fat men.
Based on the attendance.
Yeah. And then you look at body positivity campaigns. And, you know, there are some body positivity campaigns with men, but it's overwhelmingly women. Mm-hmm. And then one of the people that I met at the conference asked a really good question. And her question was, you know, if there's all these chubby chasers and there's all these men married to fat women, why aren't they standing up when fat oppression comes up in the room? Like when somebody makes a fat joke, where are all the chubby chasers saying, you know, that's not really funny?
Right.
And so it got me thinking about the question about where are all the men in fat activism? And that's not to say, because there's going to be a whole bunch of men who's like, you know, what about him? What about him? What about him? You know, we just interviewed Dexter, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying there aren't any, certainly, but I'm saying that when we think of fat activism, we usually think of women, and there are good reasons for that.
Yeah, I mean, the roots of fat activism are in feminism and the civil rights movement. And now kind of the conversation in fat activism is kind of looking at intersectionality as part of fat activism.
What does intersectionality mean?
Intersectionality is kind of the crossroads of you are fat, you are black, you are disabled, and how those issues compound. And, you know, it's a different experience for someone who has multiple marginalized identities.
Right. That applies across the board.
Yeah, and put simply that when you're a member of a minority group and you experience oppression, to be at the intersection of more than one of those is going to make the experience noticeably worse.
Yeah.
Right.
These things compound and the experiences they cease to be the same, but it's often hard to get people to see that they're not the same. So I kind of want to say first off that, yeah, being a fat man and being a fat woman, just going that far, I don't want to say it's the same at all. As someone pointed out, if you're a fat guy, you might be called a teddy bear. If you're a fat woman, you get hate mail online.
Right.
So that's a very, very, and not to say that gay guys who are fat don't, like there's a whole lot of that going on. Mm-hmm. But again, that's kind of the intersectionality of being gay and being fat.
When I think that very difference you were talking about where, you know, fat men are teddy bears, fat women are, you know, failing to be women and they're, you know, whatever.
A bunch of dirty names I'm not going to say.
Yes. And I think that's part of why we don't see a lot of fat men taking part in the conversation, because there is this idea that, oh, well, he's just a big teddy bear, or, oh, well, he just has a dad bod, or the assumption that being a fat teenager, we're like, oh, well, you must be on the football team.
There's a number of ways that fat men can pass, which fat women are not granted.
Well, I mean, let me ask this question. Like, to me, immediately what comes to mind is this sounds a little bit societal, where, like, in our culture, our government can basically seize the body of a woman and force her to do something, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have a baby. I'm sorry, you're going to have a baby. You don't get a choice in this. Whatever your position may be, functionally, it's somebody else taking control of your body. We have no equivalent of that for men. Our bodies are our own.
Yes.
And if a woman is societally unattractive, right? If she's not fulfilling society's desires, like in the old-fashioned way of thinking that may have some core thought in the way the way our culture thinks, she's not doing her job, which is so unfair. And
yes, it's exactly that. And I think there is, to a more limited extent, this idea that a fat man is not being appropriately masculine, but there's a whole bunch of ways to be fat and masculine, as we talked about in a past episode.
Well, and that's getting back to what I just said. Yeah, I agree with you completely. The sexism of it is a man is more than his body.
Yes.
In every media type, male characters have more depth, have more story. Women in traditional media are just their looks. They're just their bodies. Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me that there should be more pressure on women at large to fulfill the one thing society is supposed to value.
And so my question, rather than some sort of history or sociology lesson, my question is, as chubby chasers, what are we doing to forward the liberation of the fat people we love? Whether, because if you're a chubby chaser, it kind of, this is really hits home. To be, and you, Michael, you mentioned this in a past episode, you bring home the fat boyfriend and somebody says something and like, what do you do about that? How big a stink are you going to make at the Thanksgiving Day table, on the hike?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the question I wanted to presence is, and if you're a fat man, like a lot of fat men are just trained to roll with it because part of masculinity is that nothing bothers you. You're unflappable.
Yeah.
You don't cry. You tough it out. And so if somebody says something really horrible, the masculine way of dealing with that is, yeah, I guess so. Or you hit them back with something that is, about them. But there's no acknowledgement that maybe that's not okay.
So before we get into that, it would help me just sort of learning more about this issue. So you've mentioned just as far as like being at conferences about these things, it's a primarily female audience. Are there other areas or other gatherings, other ways that this is also present? Is it like overwhelmingly online, for instance, or articles that get published? Like, is it just everywhere?
Yeah,
it's mostly female voices. Or
Trevor can probably rattle off titles and activists, but I would say that if you talk about who is writing books about the fat experience, who is attending conferences on the fat experience, who is standing up and talking about dietitians, it's women. When I would go to these conferences, there'd be sort of like, oh, you're a fat activist. I'm like, oh, I guess I am. And it made me wonder, like, what is your form of activism? Because, you don't have to be marching in a parade to be an activist.
Right.
And you don't have to be, writing vitriol online to be an activist. I think a lot of times being an activist is just sticking up for people who don't have a voice or sticking up for yourself.
Yeah. This is a slightly different context, but something that actually made me realize that point, not about fat activism, but about gay rights, was I do a lot of work for the Boston Gay Men's Chorus, and I was talking to a friend of mine about social issues and just sort of lamenting some things that I was feeling frustrated about and feeling like I wasn't doing enough. And he pointed out, like, well, you make documentaries for a gay men's chorus traveling around the world. Like, isn't that activism? And I was like, well, I guess.
Yeah, I think it is.
Like, there are other ways to contribute to the cause that aren't, like you said, like marching in a parade or
especially
going to a
for a cause that isn't on the radar yet. Basically, by living visibly, your existence becomes an act of activism in some circumstances. And honestly, I kind of feel that way being a fat gay man in Hollywood. It's like, there aren't a lot of us,
Yeah.
And I think also there's a lot of controversy about who's allowed to talk about fat activism. And I think we're just kind of seeing the atmosphere around anything right now is complicated and kind of toxic just because everyone is feeling that their reality is being kind of attacked. So we see,
Or that someone else talking about their experience is invalid because it's not as bad as my experience, or it's not the same as my experience, and therefore that what you say about your experience is missing my experience, and so I should be talking, or you shouldn't be talking, because it gets very divisive.
I also think there's a certain degree of I've been calling it woke fatigue in my thinking, where there's a certain type of person who's willing to listen for so long to the problems of other people, and then they're done.
Yeah.
And I feel like in America, our swing for being kind to other human beings is currently moving to the right, where we're just tired of trying. That's why we're at each other's throats constantly.
But I think it's important we've talked about this before, about using your privilege, and also people having different listenings for different people.
Yes.
So, and I'm not saying that that's like, well, no one's going to listen to this person, but I think just the way anything works in the world is people have different learning styles, people have different listening styles. And, I am not going to have the same penetration that Don would in getting through to someone about a certain topic. And I think just that with that, we're all stronger together.
Mm-hmm. And what I say a lot is we're not going to get there until we all get there.
Get there.
Yeah, we don't get there until we all get there. If it's like, well, we got there, but who cares about you, because you don't really have as big a problem. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
There was I don't know if it's Kevin or Kevin Bay, but Kevin said, fat men, particularly very fat men, still have fat hate to navigate that is worsened by their own intersecting identities, disability, race, being trans, etc. But also they just exist. It doesn't matter your gender. If you don't fit in the medical equipment like an MRI machine, you don't fit.
Right.
And I think that's that's, Dan was talking about the roles of chubby chasers within fat activism, being an ally for your partners, being an ally for your friends. I think even just, if you are a straight fat man and you don't really know what to do because, you're just kind of fat and you just are like, well, what can I do? And I think it's just speak up when someone makes that joke, say, actually that's not funny and that's kind of and maybe give some context for why. Or stand up for someone, have the conversations that, the little voice in your head that you're like, oh, that's not great.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And this is something that has happened to me, and I've wondered whether or not to do anything. So say you're on, let's use a classic example, you're on a plane, right? Mm-hmm. And nearby, there's a fat person who's trying to cram into their seat without bothering people around, and they're feeling very uncomfortable. Whether or not, let's say in this instance, somebody says something. That to me is a pretty clear signal for me to speak up and say something back to whoever the instigator is. Is that
I'm
fair?
going to relate an experience I had in response to that. So I was flying to Kansas, and the flight that I was on had those ridiculously narrow seats, not just like small seats, but the ones where if I sit in it, even if I didn't have extra fat around my hip bones would be pushing against the seat.
Right.
I was trying to get into my seat. It was massively uncomfortable, and I was being made more uncomfortable by the woman next to me, who was just looking so unhappy that I existed. And then this other woman across the way from me looks over and she goes, "Oh, come sit by me. It'll be fine. Right. We'll put the seat up, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be fine." And to this day, I don't even know if this happened, but I think she gave the other woman a very severe look.
So that's
but leading by example.
Yeah,
rather than calling out the woman.
So that was my next question was, if there's something obvious that happens, like somebody says something crappy, that's one thing. And then my next question was exactly that, which is if I just notice an uncomfortable situation, am I going to embarrass somebody worse by trying to intervene and help, or should I just say?
Yeah, if you see someone running at people with tape measures when they're trying to get into a seat, do not flying tackle them.
I was going to say, if you see that, karate chop them in the throat. I had a similar experience to Don where I was on Southwest. I had my second seat. Someone sat, in the aisle seat, and a woman tried to sit in the middle seat. And I was like, oh, no, sorry, that's my second seat. And she's like, what do you mean that's your second seat? She's like, I want to sit there. And the woman in the aisle seat said, no, you don't get to sit here. That's his second seat.
Oh, wow.
He paid for that. You need to there's plenty of other places you can sit.
And that's a really great example.
Yeah.
And she didn't need to do that. And it was so great because it's like, I could have handled that myself, but to not have to do that. And the fact that she saw, I was like, kind of like, and it's like, oh, like, I don't really want to have to be like, well, I'm really fat. And like Southwest has this policy that she jumped in and cut that. Like,
and something like that seems like such a small action for some people. But honestly, like I've said before, being fat in the United States and probably the world, it's not a series of gigantic misjustices being thrust on you. It's Chinese water torture. It is that constant drip. And when somebody actually makes the effort to catch a drop before it hits me, to me, it means a lot. I can't even express how much that can affect me, despite it being virtually nothing to them.
And the reason intersectionality is becoming so important as part of this conversation, you know, Don was talking about Chinese water torture. So imagine you have that, and then also someone's, you know, jamming bamboo under your fingernails and putting rats in your pants. I don't know.
Well, I was going to say this. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, Trevor. But I would say that one of the reasons that really marks why fat is such a feminist issue is that most women do not experience it as Chinese water torture. They experience it as occasional tsunamis.
Okay.
And I think men are much more likely to experience it as drip, 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 drip.
Okay. That's interesting.
So my question, like we've gotten pretty far into it, and I just want to try and organize this in my head. It sounds like we're kind of talking about two separate but related things. So there's, you know, the difference between how many female voices are in the conversation and why that is the case versus the male voices in the conversation. And then there's the sort of the other side of that for the men, which is chasers speaking up when they don't necessarily have to, or people who can
for
quote
the partners, not just the men, but
right, or partners. Yeah, the thin person that's not in the conversation. Is that fair? Like there's sort of two,
exactly,
like prongs to this that are maybe underrepresenting when they should be stepping in more.
Let me ask the chasers in the room a question. So when I've been attacked by people in the past who are like, being gay is a choice. Like the immediate reaction I have is one of like, well, why would I choose to have this conversation with you?
Why are you choosing that? It's like, why would I? It's terrible.
But my sense of being a chaser is like, you would actually have to make a choice to step into that argument.
Oh, because it doesn't naturally fall on you.
It doesn't naturally fall on you.
That's correct.
It's not something you have to deal with unless you choose to.
Which is why most chasers wimp out and don't do it.
Right. And I get it. I mean, why invite that shitstorming? Why choose to have that god-awful conversation over
and it also should be said that, you know, you don't want to be the white, and I mean white knight. Like, you don't want to try to be the savior here. You don't want to try to rob someone of their own voice in that altercation. On the other hand, like, for example, if that woman in the seat on the aisle had said, you know, it's not his fault he's fat, he's just existing there in his own butt, like, that would not have gone well.
No.
But what she did was she really just made it about policy that had nothing to do with your body.
Yes.
And that's what worked about that.
I want to track this woman down now and like we give her a medal.
Yeah, so it's not about taking up the cause as if it were your own, because, you know, it's not your body and you don't experience that. And there's a difference there, and that needs to be honored. But there is something that's about justice, and people don't get to shit on other people.
Yeah.
And I just want to say this is such a messy conversation, and it's so like I really hope we're not coming off as mansplaining or trying to take up all the like, well, what about the men? Because it's so, it's not.
Yeah, I think it's important to, I guess maybe we should have led with this, but we're getting to it now.
We can put this in like
well, we'll just say it now.
Yeah.
Since you're adding editing to my plate. No, but it's important. Like, we are the Big Fat Gay podcast. We are for gay men. And this is going to inherently be from our point of view. And it is incumbent on us to make the effort to say this is just from our point of view. And we're trying to understand the various other points of view in front of us to the best of our ability. Some people like Dan and Trevor have a little more experience with it. Don and I have less. But yeah,
and there are people other than Dan and I who have far more experience and knowledge. Yes. Like I
sure, but again, I want to. I guess I don't know. I guess it's like are we assuming that we're at the top of the conversation? No, I'm not.
No.
But I'm assuming that people are contextualizing this podcast and this conversation appropriately. If you're not, like, yeah, we're four guys and Dan probably has the most professional expertise with this, but we're making the effort to do exactly what we're talking about, which is make it a conversation and try and normalize that discussion and make people aware of the issues that we recognize are not just our issues. Dan and I are chasers. We don't have to deal with this ourselves personally, but we do love people who do deal with this. And so it's up to us to try and A, have this conversation on the show when people listen, and B, go out in real life and do the same thing.
Yes. And you know what I was talking about is like, it's similar, but it's not the same. You know, as a chubby chaser, you get shit on for liking fat people because fat's bad and that they think. And so if you have that taste, you're bad too. But that's not the same thing as living in a fat body.
Right. Mm-hmm. My advice for somebody who is feeling, who is sort of maybe being made aware of this for the first time or hasn't taken any steps yet and maybe wants to or has the desire, just start with raising your own awareness out in life. So maybe, you know, you'd have your headphones on that plane and you see some, commotion going on down the aisle and you just ignore it. And maybe that's how it was, but maybe now take another look. And maybe now if you can just adjust your awareness in life, you'll start finding opportunities to do things that you wouldn't otherwise normally do.
Just good advice all around, really.
Sure. But it sometimes, like you were saying, like a lot of different voices are out there right now saying, well, this is my issue and this is my issue and this is my issue. And you have to make a conscious effort to pick some.
Yeah. What it comes down to, it's if not you, who?
Right.
So, you know, I've mentioned NAF before, the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance. We were at the 50th anniversary conference this year, and I got to hear Bill Fabre, who was the founder of NAFA, speak. And so he was married to a fat woman and basically saw, you know, he tried to buy her a blouse. He found one single garment in the entire city and formed NAFA to kind of be a resource, a network for fat people. But prior to the founding of NAFA, this is considered first wave fat activism. On June 4th, 1967, Stephen Post, who was a radio personality in New York, organized the first ever Fat in Central Park. And it was over 500 fat people just kind of hanging out in Central Park. I think there was like some barbecues. They had photos of Sophia Loren and where they were burning diet books. And it is just such a, cool, I mean, it's the 60s, so it's just completely on par for the 60s.
Well, and I kind of want to jump in there and think, like, there's a lot of people who might be listening to that and think, oh, well, that's kind of silly and pointless. But if I said we're going to have 5,000 gay people in the same place, or we're going to have 5,000 women on the mall in Washington, or we're going to have 5,000 black people in the streets of Baltimore, like, that makes an impression. Just existing and seeing each other exist is huge.
Well said.
And then, so this is another, this is still first wave fat acceptance, fat activism. In 1967, the same year, a couple months later, Lou Louderbeck wrote an article called "More People Should Be Fat." And it's a beautiful article. And it's so timely. I'll share it on the website. It's him talking about seeing his fat wife be discriminated against and kind of just seeing the way fat people are treated and how it needs to change.
And how he himself is discriminated against as a fat man too.
Yes.
And what's chilling about it is that he's writing this in 1967.
Yes.
And it could have been written on Facebook yesterday.
Yeah.
And part of it is like the horror of like, oh my God, nothing's changed, really? But on the other hand, it gives you that sense of solidarity of like how far back this goes, that this isn't just a bunch of people whining, that this is a historical injustice.
And then, like, as I said, 2 years later, Bill Fabre founded NAFA. And there's so much more. If you're interested in the fat acceptance movement, I feel silly saying Wikipedia, but the Wikipedia article for the fat acceptance movement is a very nice digestible version that kind of will give you other resources. I also want to plug a book by Sabrina Strings, which I think it came out at the end of last year or this year, called "Fearing the Black Body: The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia." I've only been able to read a couple excerpts. It's on my reading list, but it is fascinating and very good. So the tip of the week is kind of actually I guess, a resource. We're going to start compiling a reading list of kind of, if you're interested in some of the people we mentioned, or just kind of the history of fat acceptance or body politics.
Or even if you just want to look at a bunch of resources, so it's like, oh my God, it's not just me.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're going to have it on the website, and it's also like, we'll add to it as time goes on. If we reference something, we'll plop it there.
BigFatGayPod.com.
Yes.
And we did get a request at some point. I'm gonna try and, I don't know if you want to do this or I'll try and do this, but I think having a resources page, just like a landing page for people, which might be part of what this is, that doesn't have to have necessarily every single thing we talk about each show, but like sort of the basics.
Yes.
And then it can have this reading list.
This list will actually be through, Amazon has this thing called idea lists, where actually, like, I'll start putting, when we mention a product, I'll put it there. So like the loofah from last week, the sauna pants.
Wonder Sauna hot
Wonder
pants.
Sauna hot pants.
We're still waiting for our pair, by the way.
Yeah. Come on. Michael is just, he's pantsless right now.
I've been
He's
walking
waiting.
around pants asunder.
But since we kind of the flip things, so there is a themed diet bit for the week.
We have a diet.
So it's Dan and I would always see these commercials. I don't know what we were watching. I feel like it was probably on FX that we saw these commercials.
I think so, because it's the kind of ad you would put in an action movie.
Okay.
Okay.
But basically, we always joke like, "Oh, it's a commercial for toxic masculinity pills."
Yeah,
Oh.
that's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
So
Interesting.
Michael's going to pull it up so we can watch it.
Guys, listen up. No matter your politics, I think we can all agree it's time to make American men great again. What happened to us? Low libido, not as lean, a little pudgy. It's pathetic. It's time we whip ourselves into shape with the help of Test X180 Ignite from Force Factor. And now you can claim a complimentary bottle of this legendary testosterone booster. Just text USA to 696969. Test X180 Ignite is crushing it at Walmart. It contains scientifically studied ingredients to boost total testosterone, plus help you burn fat and build lean muscle in the gym. It may just be exactly.
Is this real?
Oh,
Yes.
very.
Very real.
American men great again. Don't we owe it to the good old US of A after all? Unleash your potential with Test X180 Ignite. Just text USA to 696.
This totally seems like an SNL sketch.
It's so bizarre. And
Or the
there's-
Donald Trump diet.
I mean,
I
So
could not subsist on eating
you have to see the
nothing
other
but
one
Donald
because
Trump.
they're all. Some of them are very aggressively like
Not subtle like that.
MAGA. But they all have the same
America, testosterone.
America.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, having done some work, not like this exact topic, but like this before from my side, like I am so sorry for the editors and producers who had to make this because they were hating every second of it.
What's interesting is a lot of the commercials use a lot of the same like stock footage of like the pudgy guy sitting on the weight bench and like the old thin man sweating aggressively and like pressing forward.
The thing I honed in on was the whole like, this will boost your testosterone so you're not like these sad girly boys.
Exactly. No,
You know,
it's
a
that's why
feminization of the large.
well, and ineffectual, not masculine, therefore bad.
And bad for the country.
Bad for the country.
application.
Absolutely. That's why America's going down the drain. There's not enough testosterone.
Not long ago, being a guy over 40 meant more couch time, a growing gut, less drive. But times have changed, thanks in part to a formula that's redefining what it means to be a man. Test X180 Ignite, the breakout supplement taking GNC by storm. Scientifically engineered to increase free testosterone and incinerate body fat. So your workouts become more productive, delivering lean muscle that'll make women want you. Unleash your potential by going to tryignite.com for a complimentary bottle of the free testosterone booster that helps sculpt lean muscle. Ignite
They just did a fist bump.
and improve performance. It's not about getting life back to the way it was. It's about making it better than it's ever been. Test X180 Ignite samples are not available in stores. You can only get your complimentary bottle by going to tryignite.com and entering the promo code below. That's tryignite.com. Tryignite.com.
And so here's what I think is interesting about this. On the female side, you have diets to be longer, leaner, more feminine, more beautiful. But this is what diet ads look like for the masculine experience of being fat.
Yeah.
It's about being hypertestosterone. It's about being tough. It's about representing your country. And but see, what's weird for us is it's because we don't really, like if we see a commercial for feminine diets, like we don't really respond because it's not for us. It's not for us. But this is meant for us supposedly. And I think it's an interesting comparison of like, I wonder if this is what women feel like when they look at diet ads targeting them.
I feel like the female targeted diet ads that I see always emphasize happiness. If you go through this journey, you will be happy.
Well, but happy with your body, because of course you're not.
Well, that's the implication, but that's not what they're pitching. They're pitching like you're unhappy because you're fat. Come this way, you will just have the world of happiness in every way. That's what their commercials spell out for you visually. This says if you take this pill, we will turn your life into a first-person action shooter, and you'll be blowing up planes within the week. And
just take your toxic masculinity pill, Stone.
All right, we have one last one.
This is a flame-grilled all-American burger smothered with cheese, bacon, and special sauce. Looks good, doesn't it? And this is what happens when you take your daily dose of Force Factors test.
What?
Yeah, it's
Whoa is right. And now...
No, like, whoa.
My God.
6'9", Test X1.
Oh, I get it.
One fat-burning testosterone.
Do you?
and then it's like, I bet you like that burger, fatty. Actually, you should take your toxic masculinity pills.
No, it's not. It's actually the opposite.
Build lean muscle in the gym.
Can I stop this?
Yeah, it's the same commercial after a certain point. So explain.
So what I think that is that in the same way that you saw the visuals for real men are welders, real men don't take baths, real men are in the gym, this is saying real men eat real hamburgers. It's an association of masculinity.
But it's so.
It goes like, okay, this is
because remember, real men don't diet either. That's a girly thing.
That's
I don't
true.
know, but
There's
it's-
no mention of diet in any of these ads.
But what's so weird to me is, so it's the burger, and then it's like, and then when you take the red pill, is that what the
association is? You see, it looks good, doesn't it? It looks real good. This burger. You know what else looks good? The results after you take our pill. They're tying them together. They're not construing them as opposites.
it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, remember, real men don't diet. That's what's implicit in this. Real men go out and shoot things and kill things and hunt them down.
See, I feel like there's one more ad in this progression that we're missing, where it's like it's just an extreme close-up on a pair of enormous breasts. Then immediately it cuts to the hand holding two pills really close together, looking kind of juicy, and
like an eagle screaming. I dropped my phone. I'm sorry, everyone. An eagle screaming, and then World War II footage, and
Literally.
an old man sweating, screaming.
I've never seen a diet ad that has the American flag flying quite so much. Like
Make men great again. Make American men great again.
Oh, God.
Well, no, it's making men great again is making America great again. Making American great again is making.
But that's
No,
what I
but
mean.
it
They're
was-
literally playing on a presidential campaign slogan. Like, it is about America.
too many
Like,
men bathing is destroying this country, apparently.
It's all the bubble baths.
Anyway, toxic masculinity pills.
Yay.
Actually, Dan, because I was like, what are these pills?
Oh,
Dan
yeah.
looked into the science behind it.
Yeah, it's actually not terrible. Like if you actually go back into the science and the studies, they're not. I mean, I only looked at it for one product. I don't know if it's the same formulation for all of them. But yeah, there are substances that do this in clinical trials and blah blah blah. So it's not just snake oil. However, the way it's sold is what's so offensive to me.
Well,
Like it's
and
not
should be to everyone.
and I would also point out that you could be selling this on the basis of science, that you will increase certain hormones if you take blah, blah, blah.
Real men don't like science.
No, real men don't like science, right? Real men blow it up.
Well, and also, like, real men don't want to take fenugreek. They want to take, like, alpha boosting formula.
X Factor.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, but the ingredient, what were the ingredients? Were
Fenugreek.
like,
Fenugreek is one of them. Yeah.
no, but they make up ingredients for the...
The proprietary blend of aminoplex, of testosterone,
I really want testosterone gnomes.
Just picturing some poor gnome being lured into a Cuisinart. Like, no, you're going to our pills.
There's 400 milligrams of manliness ignition matrix.
There you go.
And 400 milligrams of the fat incineration complex.
Because Incinerate and Matrix tested really well in studies.
I think this episode should be a fat incineration complex.
Done deal.
That could be a problem for the brand.
So I think that's our episode. I don't know how else to respond to those commercials. That was disturbing.
Hell yeah.
A high degree.
I just want to know, because so we're watching it through either Hulu or previously PlayStation View, which is pretty good about targeting, the ads, because they can.
You're both men, Trevor.
I mean,
that's probably it.
That's.
But it's just.
I can totally see the marketers for this product never considering that some men are gay or don't have these values.
Or at least that those men maybe don't shop at Walmart. Since they're so excited about their Walmart.
Or we're just too far gone to help, Don.
Oh.
They were all sold at Walmart.
We're all lost in our bubble baths.
I just didn't know I was destroying America when I ate a burger.
No, the burger is helping America.
The burger helping America.
baths.
It's when you eat the tofu burger, you're destroying America.
So I'm going to go save America at Burger King.
I'm going to destroy America by taking a bubble bath.
I'm just going to go take a nap.
Yeah.
I feel sad.
Anyway, that's it.
Yay.
Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Big Fat Gay Pod. All of the stuff we talked about today will be on www.bigfatgaypod.com. And we're on Facebook still as Big Fat Gay Podcast. No, we get a lot of you like our stuff on Facebook. Thank you.
They do, yeah.
I find Facebook strenuous, but thank you for fighting the good fight and liking our posts on Facebook and making Facebook
Again.
If you're listening in the car,
there's someone behind you who's reviewing our show.
Yes, on 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for the lovely reviews.
Look out.